Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Headline edition will bring you special reports and interviews in a moment.
There is a lot of disinformation, and some of it is not trivial pranks. Some of it is, in fact, I'll give one example I think is very conspicuous to your listeners, and that is the strange autopsy video that floats around.
Ah, yes.
That's a good example because if one studies it carefully, there seems to be pretty good evidence that it's a hoax. On the other hand, that's not the kind of thing that a couple of guys cooked up over a weekend.
You're darn right.
When you study that thing, you begin to realize, if you have any background in production, that thing had quite a budget. Someone went through an awful lot of trouble. What's a mystery about it is they didn't go to quite enough trouble to make it thoroughly convincing. There are a couple of tip-offs in the thing. The fact that you've got a guy behind the glass wearing a surgical mask is an example of that. The point is, I was inquiring. I got to be careful how I say this. I had some friends that are in the deeply classified community, and that's one of the questions I brought up. He says, the autopsy video is obviously something that required a significant budget, a budget that's probably larger than they recovered by promoting the video. And the inadvertent disclosure was, there's plenty of money in the black community. Now, in the vocabulary we're talking about, black is not a racist thing. It's a term used of what's called
Black Ops.
Yeah, a compartmented program.
Sure.
And maybe it's appropriate to just give a brief tutorial here. There are obviously contracts that are classified, secret, top secret, or whatever. If you really want to secure a contract, the next level is what they call compartmentization. What they do is they classify the existence of the contract. And since that is typically a intelligence ops, not necessarily, but usually, they call the cliche is the program went black. It's a black ops.
Yeah.
I was shocked to discover, Art, that there is a third level. I was chairman of the board of a publicly traded defense contractor, and I was called into a meeting in which I discovered that there is a level of classification that in my several decades of defense activities I never even knew about, and that's where the existence of your customer is classified.
Of what?
The existence of the customer is classified. And we were in a meeting. I was a controlling shareholder. I was called in, and we asked to have our banker represented. First Interstate Bank was called in. And the people that came in passed out their business cards, but quickly pointed out that the titles and names were covers, and we knew that. And they pointed out that we were eligible for a contract. I won't go through the whole thing. I don't want to bore you with it. The point is, it turned out we did succeed in getting the contract, and it was the B-2 before it was handed over to Northrop.
Ah.
And the little business card said High Technology Research Associates, but that was just a cover at the time. The point is, I didn't realize there's a whole infrastructure, there are courts and other procedures to handle contractors' problems and things, in a community that is even deeper than the black community.
All right, well, let's stick with black for a second. I would like to understand a few things about black ops. One, if, with regard to the UFO issue, there is disinformation being spread intentionally, and I think we all agree there is, what is the motive?
That is a subject of substantial speculation. I'll tell you what makes it complicated to try to analyze is because some of the disinformation is aimed at discrediting the whole UFO area. But there's also projects sprung that seem to bolster the UFO area. I'll give you one example. I personally have the suspicion, let me say it very carefully, I personally have the suspicion that the sighting on March 13th of 1997 over Pheonix, Arizona.
Yes, sir.
I believe that was a program, a military program of projection holography. The Department of Defense had a program called non-lethal weapons that went black in 1994. And I have no idea how they really execute this, but apparently they have the technology to create very large-scale illusions. The enigma is what do you do with it? You know, you can intimidate a battlefield, who knows? It's my suspicion for some subtle reasons that what really went on in Pheonix was a demonstration or a trial or a test of that technology. I suspect that what went over that segment of Arizona was not a UFO as we generally would tend to define it. I think personally that was a military gambit of some kind as a test.
Okay, but let's reason this out a little bit. The military, specifically the Air Force, for example, not long ago had this big news conference with Colonel Haynes to debunk the whole Roswell business. And case closed, Roswell case closed, they called it, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Now, that would indicate that the government, as represented by the military, is trying to debunk the whole UFO thing. So why, in God's name, would they do something to intentionally create the illusion of a gigantic UFO over a major city? I mean, they're working...
I have no idea.